To discuss Diana Rigg's brilliant career, I'm joined by the actor, director and screenwriter Mark Gatiss, who wrote an episode of Doctor Who specially for her, and actor Charles Dance, who appeared opposite Diana Rigg in Game of Thrones and a 90s TV adaptation of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. Welcome to both of you. Charles Dance, you go back a long way with Diana Rigg. When did you first meet her?
I first met her in the television adaptation of Rebecca. She frightened me as Mrs. Danvers.
She did evil well, didn't she?
Oh, didn't she just? But, you know, she had a formidable presence, Diana, that she really brought to bear with characters like Mrs. Danvers and Darcy, head of the Tyrell in Game of Thrones. She was a really wonderful woman and not easy to get to know, but when you did get to know her, it was well worth the effort.
What was it like, you two veteran British actors joining the television juggernaut that was Game of Thrones?
Well, you know, I mean, we used to sit and quietly bitch about various things in it that I wouldn't care to repeat.
Oh, go on.
No, not at all. She had a great sense of humour, and because we were both playing pretty undesirable characters, both of us were having a ball competing against one another to see how shitty we could be.
Mark Gatiss, what was it about Diana Rigg that made you want to write a role specially for her?
Oh, she was a great broad, that's how I describe her. She was an absolute scream. I mean, I worked with her on stage at the Old Vic, and I was, intimidated by the legend, as everybody was, but we had such a good laugh. I was just speaking to Colin Morgan, who was in the show this afternoon. We were just laughing our heads off, remembering all these wonderful things that happened, But she was... I was then doing a play with Rachel Sterling, Diana's daughter, and she was telling me all these hilarious stories about recent events, and I said very tentatively, "Do you think your ma would do a Doctor Who if I wrote it for the pair of you?" Because they'd never done anything together, and she said, "Oh God, she'd love it." So that's how it came about, and it was a wonderful experience. It was it was sort of richly patterned with episodes from her own life. But she was such an amazing, a proper presence of the old school. They really. I
mean, give us one of the. I mean, you both of you talked about her being hilarious and funny. And do you have any stories that that can illustrate?
Do you know what I remember very, very well? I've just remembered this afternoon that because I was doing, it was a version of All About My Mother, and Pedro Almodovar came over to see it 3 times. And I remember when the two juggernauts finally met. And it was outside the stage door, and she said, "Do I have it? Do I have it, Pedro?" And he was translated for her, and the question was, "What do you have? What?" And she said, "Duende, duende," which means still the passion, a Spanish passion. And he sort of said, "See it." She went, "Good, good," and she just disappeared into the night.
And Mark, when did you first become aware of her as an actress?
Well, I was too young for the Avengers. I knew of the Avengers, and through the new Avengers, I was slightly obsessed with it, even though it wasn't on. But it was films like Theatre of Blood, which I always absolutely adored. And then I saw her on stage at the Almeida, and I remember her saying that Ian McDiarmid and Jonathan Kent had sort of rescued her at that point in her career and relaunched her stage career with extraordinary success.
Charles Dance, I was interested in that old Woman's Hour clip that we heard there of Diana Rigg talking about getting bored of the role of appeal of not wanting to do one-dimensional parts. I mean, she was very endlessly curious, had huge range. I mean, what for you made her stand out as an actress?
Well, her ability to give these one-dimensional parts that she was lumbered with for a while, another dimension for a start, because she was searingly bright. She was a very, very bright woman, and she gave these lesser parts the dimension she needed purely because of her talent and her formidable presence. And just getting back to what Mark was saying about Theatre of Blood, I loved that film. And the work she was doing with Vincent Price, I think I just got the impression watching that film, because I loved it so much, that her and Vincent Price must have had a ball making it. because she spent a lot of time, I think, suppressing her sense of humour. You know?
And she had this wonderful sharp tongue, didn't she?
Oh, she did indeed, yeah. And of course, she had a fantastic voice, which Rachel, her daughter, has inherited.
Charles Dance and Mark Gatiss, thank you very much. And we've been discussing Diana Rigg, who's died at the age of 82.